my world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say I am what I am.
We're joined down here in the new palatial surroundings of Tenny's new offices down here in Ellis Quay, and I'm again joined by Michele Ann Kelly. So Michele, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be chatting with you today.
Michele, as I mentioned when we last spoke, I originally knew you as a singer. You're now involved in the theatre, and our paths are crossing once again with the transgender community. Yeah. Just tell me, you're involved with the Civic theatre out there in Tallaght. What does that involve?
Well, it's great to have support from the Civic Theatre and to be their new associate artist for 2018. So Transition Family and Me is the title of a new theatrical work. And this really came about, and that ties in with the Civic Theatre, it really came about through my postgraduate research at NUIG last year, or over a year ago now. So as a result of the dissertation, which was looking at transgender representation on the Irish stage, I discovered, to my great surprise, that in the Irish theatrical canon there are only two works that represent trans people's stories. And they should get a mention: Amy Conroy's Look Just Kissed You Hello and Una McKevitt's The Big Deal. And I really couldn't find anything else in an Irish context that represented trans individuals' stories, and that really struck me. So that began, I suppose this is where this all started, in terms of me coming up with, I suppose, a structure as to how I could build relationships with my trans peers and capture their stories. And in an attempt to do that, I've obviously went and spoke to a number of people, and one of those great supporters are the Civic. They're very, very interested in the idea. They're very keen to support the work, and invited me to be the associate artist this year, and have been terrific so far in terms of trying to get this project off the ground, among other supporters, which would be Creative Ireland, Tenny, of course, and Contact Studios and South Dublin County Council. So it's been a mishmash of coming up with a structure to do this project, putting it out to the various creative industries and people here, and it's just so fantastic to have the feedback so far and the positive energy around getting this made. So it's a long answer to your question, but it's to go back in order to go forward, I suppose.
Trans issues in Ireland have been around for nearly the best part of 30 years, since Lydia Floyd tried to get her birth cert changed, but it's only been in the last, say, 5 or 6 years that it's really come into the public consciousness. Since 2015, we've had probably some of the best trans legislation in the world, and I wonder, do people should be proud of that, and I wonder, are people aware of that, and is that something you're trying to bring out in this piece?
Transition Family and Me will, in this kind of early development stage, is looking to capture the stories from trans individuals around specific themes, and they are identity, gender, family and home. So I think, yes, I think legal changes are, and those milestones that have been achieved through a lot of hard work from various people in the community will definitely come up in that discussion. I'd imagine it certainly will.
Yeah. Do you think, I don't know how you feel about how mainstream, and particularly what we would call soap world, but you almost can't have a soap these days, particularly a British soap, without at some stage having a trans character. Now, I know Coronation Street was probably the first one. I was a bit upset when they used a genetic woman as a trans woman. But is it a passing phase, or is this more, would you interpret this more as a vote of confidence?
think it's very hard to comment on other people's work or other people's ideas of a person's journey or life, and that's why I'm doing this project, because my own experience as someone who identifies in the broadest sense as a woman, as a lesbian, as a daughter, a partner, these are things I mentioned to you the other day, a theatre maker, a singer, songwriter. So the word identity, you know, there's a lot of other words underneath that word that encompass who I am. And I think looking to other people's work is always useful, it's really helpful. But for me, specifically, I'm interested in finding out the trans perspective, and specifically the Irish trans perspective and the Irish voice, and on identity, gender, family and home. Because I think what we might find, and it's very exciting not to know what we're going to find, but I think what we might find is some very similar connections there in terms of human connection, in terms of support and sometimes lack of support and confusion. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting and a meaningful journey for people to go on, I hope, and that they will take that step with me. And I think it's very important to look for authentic representations of trans individuals.
Sure. Now today, it's not, you're hoping to meet trans people down here in the Cheney offices, and no better place to do that. It's not, I suspect, a series of auditions you're looking for, but a series of interviews. So what are you hoping to achieve today, and what type of person are you trying to find?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and it certainly isn't an audition by any means. The writer for the piece Transcripts interviewed 75, I believe, trans women across the world to put his piece of theatre together, and used, I believe, a cast of, I think, between 7 and 10 women to embody those stories of those trans women, and use trans actors. So this is a new road for me, and I'm not going to pretend I have it all figured out, but what I am very clear of is, one, as the theatre maker, is to build genuine relationships with people and to meet members of the community who identify as trans, or who prefer to say I'm a trans person. Some people might not like to say, or don't identify with saying I am trans. So it's to understand that every journey is different. And in this project, what I'm hoping to do is that people are brave enough, I guess, to come forward and build that relationship with me, allow me to record their story, take part then in a photo shoot session, which will all take place in October, and then I will put those stories and images together for a small exhibition in December, on the 4th of December, and we'll get time to build relationships, to hear the stories and to reflect on the work, and then hopefully in 2019 I can move forward and make a theatrical work. Wouldn't it be wonderful if there are members of the transgender community who are interested in performance and acting, and they come forward and can take part in this? It would be fantastic. But certainly at this point, I'm just looking for people who are open and willing and brave enough to come forward and say, hey, I'll have a chat with you, and I'll tell you my journey and my perspective on these issues, on these themes, I should say. And hopefully there will be a wide variety of people who will take part. Whether you're 19, 29 or 89, I would love to hear your story, and that's the important thing.
On that basis then, I mean, there's the trans spectrum isn't monolithic. There are trans men, there are trans women, there are transvestites. Are you hoping to encompass all of those different definitions or different self-identifications?
I really am, but I'm also very mindful of, and to my knowledge, as I mentioned earlier, it's still the case that there are only 2 plays in Ireland addressing trans narrative, and neither of those plays, to my knowledge, used trans actors. And maybe that's because they couldn't at the time. And both plays are beautiful pieces of work. And it's difficult to say at this point, where I'm inviting people on this journey, it's difficult to say who will come forward. I'm very much hoping, and I'm excited about the idea that we will potentially be able to meet, I will meet people who will encompass that broad spectrum, as you say, and that it won't just be, but that's going to be up to the people who come forward. And, you know, it can't all be achieved in one. If we can get this piece off the ground, with a number of participants from a wide variety of age demographics and religious beliefs and identifications under the transgender umbrella, that would be wonderful, and that's what I would hope. But of course the exciting part is, Mick, we don't know.
Yeah.
We have to see, and we have to allow people to come forward and see who does.
I won't take issue with you about the stage, because I'm not as qualified to talk about that, but I would say Ireland probably made two really fine examples of trans in movies, and that was both Neil Jordan's Breakfast at Pluto with Cillian Murphy, and then of course Mona Lisa with Jay Davidson.
That's correct, yeah.
So it's are you in any way influenced by those, or are you saying, I have got a clean slate, or I've got a blank canvas and I can interpret it based on what people tell me?
Yeah, I think the idea of finding authentic stories is very, very important to me, and that's my primary focus, is to find authentic stories to engage with somebody in a real human sense, and then I will be more educated on a trans person's journey from a wide variety of perspectives, and that will inform the work, their voices will inform the work. Previous works are interesting to look at and to reference, and some people take issue in the community with some representations that are out there, and this is an opportunity to make something brand new, and not to be able to look back and see what these guys have done, and that's what they've done. But this is hopefully going to be something very fresh and very new.
And what about, now you've talked about transgender people, but one of the I suspect one of the elements that really pleased me when the legislation passed was the fact that people who I consider friends of mine, they didn't have to divorce, that they could stay married.
Yeah.
And that was that to me was just a major milestone. Are you looking to get partners and even family members of somebody who is now self-identifying as trans?
Yeah, it would be fantastic, and that's the thing. An individual coming forward, I don't know their story. I don't know if they're married. You know, I mean, I don't know if they have children. I don't know if they self-identify as trans, and they're the parent or the child in the sense of family.
Sure.
And I think that's what's going to be really interesting for the project, and for audience members to engage with at the exhibition element, and also for the people who get involved in the project meeting each other and exchanging stories, because I mean, to me it's phenomenal that we've had to wait this long in terms of legislation, and I think that's a whole conversation for another day. What hopefully might come out of this will be those great stories, and the stories of resilience and love and compassion, that people were able to focus on their relationships rather than a piece of legislation or a minority viewpoint of what their family looks like. Every family looks different, yet every family, I think, from my own experience, should be about love, compassion, kindness and support and hearing each other. And they're all the things that are important for me as theatre maker in my attempt to put this piece of work at this point together. So who knows what's going to come
Another
forward.
interesting aspect, and we heard this at the Trans Pride that recently took place. There's many trans people who came to Ireland from other countries, particularly Brazil. Would you be looking to, shall we say, tap into people's stories and compare their, if you like, their original story with their migrant story in that sense of the word?
Yeah, I think there's very interesting issues around the word, and again you're linking, it's interesting because your questions link into those themes that I was specifically looking at: identity, gender, family and home. Because somebody who was born in Brazil or New York or London, who may be living here, are resident here. Their stories, they're resident in Ireland. This is their place of home, so their stories are really important and really interesting to us. That what has happened to you and the place you maybe once called home, or did it ever feel like home to you? So certainly there are no limitations. If anything, I'm very eager to get the Irish perspective. That to me is somebody resident here. Where they were born is irrelevant. If they're resident in Ireland and they're part of this community, and I say part of this community, I don't mean somebody who's to be actively involved in TENI, for example, but they self-identify as trans. I want to meet you and I want to hear your story. And I think other people, and this is the reason for doing this, I think this will open up a dialogue. And I think this is piece of theatre is, and this research element is an opportunity for us to have those conversations and to gather these stories and reflect and to see how we can make the piece of theatre from this gathering of the stories part, and what arises from that will be, I think it's going to be very, very interesting, but again, I don't know, so...
And is it all, just before we conclude, Michelle, is it all personal stories, or are you interested in finding out the environment? Because as I say, this goes back nearly 30 years.
Yeah.
And most people would say, yes, they identify Lydia Foy with the, if you like, the trans journey and the trans campaign. But one of the people I've always said needs to be given as much credit is Michael Farrell, who came from the Free Legal Aid. He was originally from the People's Democracy and the Civil Rights Movement in the North. Now, Michael's not trans, but he probably knows more about the environment, the official environment. And I'm just wondering, is that an aspect that you would look at including as well? In other words, yes, we have the personal stories, but we had an environment that had to be addressed, and somebody like Michael is, as I say, his commitment over such a long period of time. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's a really great question, and I think I have structured a series of questions for the informal interviews for this phase of the project, and I think focusing on the themes that I've mentioned probably a gazillion times at this point absolutely is going to capture in there a person's view of their environment, because there's a piece at one point in the questions about a looking back and a looking forward, and I think and that's why in the sense of family and home, what was that environment like for people? And I think if people come forward who are 19 and somebody comes forward to have a dialogue and take part in this, and they're 59, we're going to have very different stories, of course.
Absolutely.
But in many ways there may be connections in there, tangible connections and commonalities.
Yeah.
But I definitely think the environment is going to really make itself known in those conversations that we have.
Sure. Finally, how can people, not everybody may be able to get along today, but how can people get in contact with you if they, if they're moved by this and they want to, as I say, want to get a bit more information or even take part?
Yeah, I would love for people to take part, and if they haven't been able to come along today, they can contact me. I'm on Facebook under Michele Ann Kelly, Michele Ann Kelly -MAC, M-A-K, which is a little abbreviation of the name, and under my little theatre company called the Little Red Theatre Project. So they can find me there on Facebook. And my email, which is extremely long, I apologise in advance, is michelle@micheleannkelly.ie.
That's with one L.
One L, Michelle, so it's really tricky. But I'm on Facebook and I'm very accessible there, and I would absolutely be delighted for people to reach out. And just to say, in terms of you mindful that you're saying about wrapping up, Transition Family and Me is now in the research and development phase. So I'm inviting people to come on this journey, and that journey really involves us getting to know each other, us having an interview that's audio recorded. That'll happen in October, and also a photo shoot session that is a reflection of your story. The individual comes forward, and then I will edit each of those stories and use a little snippet of the story of each participant and the image we create together for an exhibition on December 4th. And then we have a period of time after that to reflect on the work and to meet up informally, and hopefully at that point, sometime in the new year, I can then really look at the stories and see what piece of theatre we can create going forward. So yeah, if anyone is interested in finding out more, please do get in touch with me on that.
And the exhibition that's going to be held at the Civic, is it?
The Civic, yeah, the Civic is in Tallaght, yeah, the Civic Theatre, which is now known as the Civic, and it is in Tallaght, and it'll be on December 4th. So do look out for information on the Civic, and you'll find information on Tenny's website, the Civic, Create Ireland, and of course Michele Ann Kelly on Facebook, and the Little Red Theatre Project.
Yeah, and we might even have good news from the Gender Recognition Review Body by then, so
we hope so.
December could be a very big month. So Michele Ann Kelly, fabulous to talk to you again. Keep us posted.
Oh, thank you so much, Mick. It was great to talk to you as always.
My world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say I am.